You will not be shocked to find out that Donald Trump, in addition to all of the horrendous things that he has done and said, also apparently knowingly in multiple instances exposed people to the COVID that he knew that he had. He apparently tested positive for COVID 3 days before his first debate against Joe Biden. That is according to his last chief of staff. So that's a new book that's coming out. Once again, you only get to find out about this stuff through a book. The fact that he knowingly stood near Joe Biden, who's 1 billion years old, and exposed him to COVID. His chief of staff is now revealing. Thank you, Meadows. I really appreciate that. Like a year later. Anyway, he says, Mark Meadows also writes that though he knew each candidate was required to test negative for the virus within 72 hours of the start time of the debate, nothing was gonna stop Trump from going out there. You know, like a sort of natural social prohibition against murder. No, not even that would stop him. Trump, Meadows says, returned a negative test from a different test shortly after the positive. So he tested positive and he tested negative. And I will ask you, by the way, we're gonna give you a little bit of a spoiler. Within about a week, he was in the hospital with COVID. So I think I know which one was accurate. If you had gotten a positive test and a negative test, how would you act? As if you were positive or as if you were negative? I think I know what every moral, decent human being in the audience would do. Unfortunately, Trump is neither of those things. So he did eventually announce that he had COVID on the 2nd of October. The White House said he announced that result within an hour of receiving it. And he went to the hospital later that day. They like carried his nearly dead corpse to the hospital there. So I announced it within an hour. You know, within an hour of 3 days later after I had found out about it, or even more. On the 26th, he tested positive. So they lied for a week. And that is bad enough to some extent. The fact that he did the thing with the debate, and we'll get to more of that. But there's actually even worse that we'll get to. I do want to let you know, Meadows was apparently surprised because he said Trump is a massive germaphobe. How could he have gotten COVID? I mean, precautions including buckets of hand sanitizer and hardly seeing anyone who hadn't been rigorously tested. Well, I don't know, he'd spent 6 months mocking people for wearing masks and telling them they wouldn't need to take a vaccine and all that. I feel like there were a few precautions that he kind of avoided taking. In any event, we'll get to more of how awful this is, but JR, what do you think?
So this shows you even more. So that last quote that you had from Mark Meadows, where he said it's a surprise that he even got it because of how big of a germaphobe Trump is. And there's buckets of hand sanitizer. So what does hand sanitizer do when someone's breathing at you? Not much. So it first off, it illustrates just how much maybe neither one of them understood how this works, or just didn't care, or thought that they were somehow like, they had this protection of republicanism on them. I'm not sure what the thought process is. So when people get surprised that they got it, I'm left just as baffled as they are for their questioning it. But also number two, if he knows that he needs to keep people from him and he was trying to, or he was hand sanitizing like crazy, that means he knows once he's got it and he's spreading it around that it's very possible that he's spreading it. He just doesn't care. And neither does Mark Meadows, and neither does anyone else that knew that this was happening. So if you already know that you're a massive germaphobe and you avoid people and you try to keep people from touching you, and you start touching others, you know how it affects others, or else you wouldn't be a germaphobe in the first place. It's full knowledge of what was happening and what they could be doing to people.
Yeah, and with that full knowledge, then lying over and over and over. So let's get into some of the lies. But first of all, I gotta read this paragraph from Mark Meadows. He said his face, for the most part at least, had regained its usual light bronze hue, and the gravel in his voice was gone, but the dark circles under his eyes had deepened. That was the day of the debate. As we walked in the venue around 5 o'clock in the evening, I could tell that he was moving more slowly than usual. He walked like he was carrying a little extra weight on his back. Yes, his usual light bronze hue that he just naturally has.
Yeah.
Is he Greek? What? They slathered makeup on his pallid worm-like body. That's what they did. But anyway, that's the least bad part of this. So the host of the debate, Chris Wallace, later said Trump was not tested before the debate because he arrived late. Organizers relied on the honor system, and never in the history of honor systems has it been a worse idea. You're gonna have Trump be governed by the honor system? Yeah, they couldn't test him because he was late, not because he knew 3 days earlier that he tested positive for COVID. So what did he do? He went there didn't take a test because he was late. That was his design. I will be there so late that they can't test me because I know that I have COVID in my body. I'm gonna stand 15, 20 feet from Joe Biden for hours and potentially expose him to it. He could have killed Joe Biden, but I don't know. I mean, he was willing to see his vice president executed. So can we really be shocked about that? But maybe I'm wrong, JR. Feel free to disagree with me. I don't think that that's the worst part of this story. We're gonna now get to the worst part of the story. But first, I wanna play a video for you. And this is a video from just a few weeks after that debate. Here is something Donald Trump said in an interview with Fox.
And I have to. I'm the president of the country. I can't hang around in a basement. So I figured there would be a chance that I would catch it. Sometimes I'd be in groups of, for instance, Gold Star families. I met with Gold Star families. I didn't want to cancel that. But they all came in and they all talked about their son and daughter and father. And I can't back up, Maria, and say, give me room. I want room. Give me 12 feet. Stay 12 feet away when you talk. They come within an inch of my face sometimes. They want to hug me and they want to kiss me. And they do. And frankly, I'm not telling them to back up. I'm not doing it. But I did say it's like, it's obviously dangerous. It's a dangerous thing, I guess, if you go by the COVID thing.
Okay, so for JR's sake, in that video, he was talking about, I always knew I'd probably get COVID because I have to meet a lot of people, and like I met with these Gold Star families, and they're telling me all these sad stories, and they're getting close to me, and they're trying to kiss me, and what am I supposed to do? Tell them to back off. So it's very dangerous because these people get in your face, and and then I got COVID. So what are you supposed to do? If it's not clear. He had an event with the Gold Star families. These are families who he meets with because they had soldier relatives that died. He is trying to make you think that they infected him with COVID. He already knew that he had COVID, and he met with the grieving families of dead soldiers and got this close to them by his own admission. So potentially, like they may have gotten COVID, they may have gotten sick. We don't know. And he knew that he had it when he met with them. And then he goes on Fox and lies and said, I don't know, maybe they gave it to me.
Yep.
Look, I know that we don't need this story to think that he is one of the most grotesque humans in history, certainly in the history of our government. This is singularly, though, one of the most sociopathic stories I have ever covered. And you know what this job is like. You know what the US government is like. This stands out. And I went to foxnews.com this morning, nowhere.
No,
they're not even gonna mention it. So I will ask you this. If Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders or AOC had done this, do you think they would have made time to mention it? Do you think they might have covered it, JR?
Come on, John. No. Yes, of course. So this is the way these things work. So as you point out, the layers to how horrible of a human being he is, just there's no bottom. Every time someone goes, oh, well, he got COVID, or maybe he'll figure it out. The people who said maybe he'll realize something now that he's got it, I couldn't think of a more laughable conclusion to this series of events. If nothing else, the worse things that happen to him, the more he does horrible things. He thinks the way to get out of a bad situation is to be worse than the situation. And I guess it's worked for him. He's still around. He survived this. He survived 27 bankruptcies. He survived people that hate him. He survived businesses that absolutely sucked. He survived everything that he's done wrong in his life, and people that he's alienated and probably accidentally killed spreading COVID. He's done those things, but it means nothing to him. It's never penetrated his brain to go, maybe it's me. There's never been one moment of self-reflection in this guy's life. It's always someone else's fault. So much so to the point, I really do think he believes, yeah, those Gold Star families did it to me. He knows that's not it, but he convinced himself this level of liar, a liar of this level, never finds themselves culpable or responsible for the things they've done. It's always someone else.
Yeah, 100%. And they won't care. Like if you found out that someone you knew in your life had done this, would you ever talk to them again? How is it that this one person can do these, like so many of these things, that if they were the only thing you knew about a person, you'd be done with them? Like if you, like this is the most sociopathic thing, I think individually that I can imagine one person doing. We also know, drawing on the hurricane map is the craziest thing, the most cringeworthy and embarrassing thing. How does he do all of these? I don't understand how he makes time for all of it. I want to add a little bit more terrible though.
Yeah, go.
Sorry, what
yeah.
were you gonna say?
No, do it.
Okay, here's a little bit more terrible. Okay, so remember your timeline. On the 26th, he finds out that he has tested positive for COVID. Oh, I just realized there's another awful thing I can throw onto this. So this is according to New York Times reporter Michael Shear. We don't have a graphic for it. Hours after he received the call from Meadows informing him of a positive test, Trump came to the back of Air Force One without a mask and talked with reporters for about 10 minutes. I was wearing a mask, but still got COVID, testing positive several days later. He went on an airplane to a group of journalists without a mask. He had just found out he tested positive for COVID, and he knowingly and willingly exposed them to COVID. But that wasn't even the awful thing that I was gonna mention. 3 days later, he has the debate, and you might recall, remember, this is a guy who knows he has COVID, who just rigged the system so he wouldn't be tested on the debate stage. And here is what he said on that debate stage.
Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to, but I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen.
So we played that video, when we found out that he had COVID, and we thought it was sort of ironic that he's mocking another elderly man for being scared of getting COVID, and then he got COVID. But now he had it and knew he had it when he's mocking Biden for wanting to wear a mask. He's in the process of exposing a person to a potentially deadly virus while mocking the other person for precautions against spreading a potentially deadly virus. Has there ever been a sociopath on the level of Donald Trump?
Yeah, you know what? You can't keep track of the levels of insanity and horrific actions from him. So yeah, are people still gonna follow him? Are you still gonna go, this is a good guy? Are you still gonna say he had any kind of any inkling of a thought to look after other people? If you think that he would do this to people that are around him, from reporters to staff members to, the people that actually helped him be who he was as a president, doesn't care, breathe on them, it doesn't matter. So what do you think he cares about you in Florida? What do you think he cares about old James in Idaho? He doesn't care. Why would you think he would have any kind of response to this that actually protects the country when he won't even protect the people that are closest to him? He doesn't care. He does not care. And that was very illustrative in the way that he handled the entire COVID pandemic. As we've already seen, and as he's denied, oh yeah, I know, I wasn't covering it up. He wasn't covering it up. Your track record shows you cover it up. Your track record shows you lie about it. Your track record shows that you will openly and knowingly breathe on people knowing what you've got. We know your track record.
The official GOP Twitter account 1 hour ago tweeted, "Life is precious. Republicans will always stand for the sanctity of life." You follow a guy who went in a room with a bunch of people, families of veterans, and he tried to give them COVID. Get the F out of here with your "we're pro-life" nonsense. They tweeted that seemingly directly in response to these stories coming out.
They're also pro-military too, John.
Oh, totally pro-military. Oh no, super national defense. They just want to get people who've lost their kids in foreign wars sick and potentially die from COVID. Anyway, he says, by the way, it's fake news. Okay.
It's all it takes.
You also said that you arrived late for the debate. So you say it was fake news. Your chief of staff says you did it. 3 different unique sources have confirmed that all of this is true, but you say it's fake news. You don't have a track record on whether you're honest or not for us to check, do you? Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.